Hello friends, I am Kapou Malakar from Department of Mass Communication and Journalism. Today we are going to discuss on universal access and meaningful use in the context of convergence. Digital connectivity plays a critical role in ameliorating lives as it opens the door to unprecedented knowledge, employment and financial opportunities for billions of people worldwide. Information and communication technology continue to be a key enabler of economic and social development, bridging the digital divide and fostering an inclusive digital economy. Despite all utopian dreams, the information age has so far touched only a tiny minority of world population. The digital divide became the headline news, the discussion of which began in 1999 alongside the optimism and hype surrounding the information age. In this module, I would attempt to discuss about digital divide, what is digital divide, what are the factors that lead to digital divide, and if at all modern ICTs can fulfill the promise towards transparency of government, rationality of markets, universal access to information, blessings of democracy, prosperity, especially for 80% of world population in developing countries. The digital divide has come to occupy a privileged position in recent debate about internet, computer technologies and access to information systems. Because of the continuous development of information technologies and the emergence of new technologies, the digital divide is a dynamic, complex phenomenon which has political, cultural and ethical dimensions. We can see that information is not equitably available commodity. Acquisition, application and use of information, although dynamic, has complex and granted only to privileged one. The applicability of ICT mediated information to the existing limited local knowledge base has been a challenge to the adoption of ICTs. The Government of India proposes numerous mega schemes to woo the poor in order to bridge the digital divide in the country. The gradual importance of universal access in policy solutions of Government of India has not succeeded to address the digital divide on a mass scale, where access has not led to meaningful use of technology. This module will help to understand the barriers to extensive diffusion and innovative use of ICTs and the factors that influence the adoption decision of digital technologies. The discussion is expected to be helpful to improve the strategies that are inclusive, which bring the laggard and marginalized to the limelight of development. Coming to the definition of digital divide. The digital divide can be defined as the gap between individuals, households, businesses and the geographic areas at different socio-economic levels with regard to their opportunities to access and use ICTs, especially internet, for a wide variety of activities. This is as per the definition of Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The term digital divide was introduced in the mid-1990s by Larry Irving Jr., former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Telecommunication and Communication. It has brought the public attention to the existing gap in access to information resources between those who can afford to purchase the computer hardware and software which is necessary to participate in a global information network, and those which cannot afford to purchase the same, as for example low-income families and communities. E.J. Wilson, in his book The Information Revolution and Developing Countries, defined digital divide as the inequality in access, distribution and use of information and communication technologies between two or more populations. In line with digital divide, it is important to know about universal access and meaningful use. The policy paradigms inclined to denote access as exclusive supply of physical artifacts, making it obtainable for targeted beneficiaries. Technological frame centering on the availing and strengthening information infrastructure for all can legitimize universal access. Universal access has a multifarious, complex, conditional and circumstantial socio-technological phenomenon. The Vision study reveals that the time, cost and quality of the information and communication technology and the environment in which it is used, as well as more qualitative concern for security and ease of use, are all crucial mediating factors in people's access to information. Now, we will discuss about access to what. Access in practice or individuals' perceived access is more sought after than theoretical access to ICT. Access is not simply restricted to either having or not having a mobile phone or an internet connection. Even possessing many different communication technologies do not imply meaningful use unless the user could not make use of the opportunities that a mobile phone could provide. Possessing a personal computer cannot ensure a conspicuous connection to the internet. Similarly, access to internet or having internet connection would not secure accessing every available website and online resources effectively. Material access to ICT would be useless without the requisite skills, knowledge and support to use it effectively. A host of researchers have mentioned about access rainbow, which is less determinist in nature, looking into digital divide as more than the physical access to digital technology and even purchasing power. Technological determinists presume conformist notion of digital divide that access to ICT inevitably leads to use. According to access rainbow, the access to mobile phone would be different from the use of mobile phone. Access rainbow signifies several niceties of marginality that involve central and core access, edge or peripheral access and non-access. Other nuances include access to physical devices, software tools, content, services, social infrastructure and government. There is a huge disparity in access to internet and telecommunication between developed and developing world. ICT gap between developed and developing world has widened, which hinders the realization of universal access and integration of all countries into a global information society. Wilson has mentioned 8 aspects of access that could lead to digital divide. First one is physical access. That refers to material access, that means the availability of hardware, software, applications, networks that comprise access to distribution of network and bandwidth facilities. Second is financial access, that comprises affordability to own a TV, a computer or a laptop, an internet connection or a mobile phone. Third one is cognitive access, which is associated with uses and skill access, the capabilities needed for operating ICT hardware and applications, for producing meaningful online content and for engaging in online communication and cooperation. It also includes motivation to use ICT, behavioral intention of users towards accepting ICT and ICT enabled services, perceived difficulty to operate a technology, technology phobia, lack of trust on operators and agent, skills, awareness and knowledge regarding the use of a technology. Fourth is design access, that refers to the ease of use of the interface of the device, ease to navigate the information sources or the device to user connectivity. Fifth is content access, that refers to the barrier to access content due to literacy and language. Number 6, production access comprises access to ICT that helps user to engage in online communication and cooperation, without which meaningful online content cannot be produced. Number 7 comes the institutional access, which refers to the access to ICT that helps citizen to participate in institutions. Government of India recognized the need of integrating ICTs into wider process of institutional reform and organizational change. Number 8, we have political access, that means access to ICTs that leads to participate in community activities, to take decisions and to empower the users. There are many telecom service providers who are looking for busking out the lucrative market for telecom in northeast region of India. In many rural areas, local authorities are reportedly unsupportive to accommodate any new technological innovations. In a survey, it is found that local authorities or Gaon Panchayats in rural Assam have been charging huge amount of rupee for making right-of-way permission in laying optical fibers across the villages. Moreover, government of many states have not ensured a single window clearance system to facilitate telecom service providers in setting up the telecom infrastructures. Permission regarding erection of telecom tower in the concerned village for installing base transceiver station by local authorities or village headmen is routinely delayed as well as denied. After the earthquake in 2011, erection of rooftop towers is banned in a few states, due to which building of ground-based towers remain the available option. However, land acquisition for raising ground-based tower is not free from hitches because of unclear land titles and commercial land uses clauses. Although V-satellite has been another viable alternative for the state, however, the approval for V-satellite connectivity takes time and the charges for bandwidth connectivity under V-satellite option is too high to afford for villagers particularly. Hence, the political access poses to be important determinants to bridge the digital divide in northeast region of India. We have to mention here that Strover has classified 4 categories of digital divide that comprises infrastructural, socio-economic, demographic and cultural divide. Lack of infrastructure often hinders rural households to access to plethora of basic services on offer, including government services. Geography, rural or urban location plays an important factor that determines the access to available network and bandwidth facilities of accessing ICT. Geographical isolation and remoteness also affects the availability of digital opportunities to a household and the subsequent inclusion and exclusion of a household from the information society. Lack of proper road connectivity in remote hilly locations is a problem for most of the northeast states, including Assam. This has resulted in impediments in installing well-functioning and maintaining of telecom infrastructure in Assam. Hilly landscape of northeast states is incompatible for installation of base transceiver stations for wireless coverage. In fact, laying of optical fiber cable is not physically and economically viable across the hilly terrain of northeast India. As a fact of the matter, limited number of OFC point of presence in the northeast region has resulted pertinent bandwidth problem and a slow data transmission. The work of road widening and frequent landslides lead to fiber cuts, thus a continued disruption of services. Regular cut of underground OFC is more prominent in rural areas due to incoordination in road construction in terms of digging and repairing as a part of activities under government-sponsored employment security schemes such as Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Schemes and Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Under National Optical Fiber Network Project in 2013, several lakh route kilometer of OFC are announced to be laid down in rural Assam. However, lack of strong mandate and absence of harmonization of activities of local authorities, rural panchayat body and multiple entities as for example rural electricity, public work departments gas and water have already resulted significant wastage of financial resources. There are also sociological sides of digital divide that determines the missed opportunity on the part of millions of people to obtain desirable jobs and enhance their life by using computers and the internet. Prejudices among women imposed by male-controlled society, lack of time beyond household management in terms of gender-based divide, security concerns and harassment over the uses of internet and mobile phone are considered as some sociological factors that are responsible for digital divide. The socio-economic category further comprises financial and educational condition of the users. Today, there are many types of digital divide at local, national, regional and world level, such as gender divide, age divide, income divide, each such divide having its specific background, phenomenon, evolution trend, perspectives as well as its specific bridging solution and initiatives. This mostly constitutes socio-economic dimension of digital divide. Then we come to psychological attribute, which includes motivation of users to accept a communication technology, application and services. The socio-psychological and cultural variables, as for example, subjective norm of the household, community and society, social influence while making decisions, perceived enjoyment are some other identifiable grounds behind the technology acceptance and use by individual. Linguistic and cultural divide comprises another dimension of digital divide. The gap between those who speaks English and those who speaks other language has further exacerbated digital divide. There are large differences in access to ICTs among different ethnic and cultural groups. These dramatic cultural disparities are far more notable in India, as it is compounded by linguistic issues. An estimated 60 to 80% of all websites in India are in English, whereas only an estimated 2 to 10% of the population speaks fluent English, while the rest, that comprises more than 900 million Indians and about 1.2 billion South Asians, speak other languages. For Indians who speak no English, the barriers to information age is almost inseparable. All widely used operating system require some knowledge of English or one of the northern language. For Indians who speak no English, the barriers to information age are almost inseparable. All widely used operating system require some knowledge of English or one of the northern languages. Hence, the digital divide as a natural phenomenon as accepted by some scholars. Therefore, they do not suggest any intervention to bridge the digital divide, rather propose to wait for self-correcting with the development of ICT. The other scholars such as W. Lay, M. R. Gibbs, S. Sang and H. Lee and so on have suggested adopting interventions through institutional apparatus to develop motivation towards utility use of ICT among the marginalized section of the society. The global focus of the debate is quickly settled around the issue of technological inequalities within individual countries. The dominant political view broadly developed around combating the apparent dichotomous divide between those who are connected and those who remain disconnected from technology and information. The foundation of mainstream political dialogue over information and communication poverty and information haves and information haves not and the digital divide have been grounded on the issue of technological inequalities. The large unorganized workforce in India comprises blue-collared workers such as drivers, carpenters, painters, maid, waiters and office boy etc. constitute the have-not section of digital divide. They cannot afford to own a computer and have lack of skill to operate a computer and to surf internet. In many cases, because of time constraints and distance, this section of people cannot reach the internet cafe or kiosk in nearby vicinity of their resident. Penetration of mobile internet in India. Let us discuss about penetration of mobile internet in India. Around 3.2 billion people worldwide have access to and use internet by the end of 2015, of which 2 billion users belong to developing countries, as per the report of Telecommunication Development Bureau (ITU). The number of households having internet access at home has increased from 18% in 2005 to 46% in 2015. During 2000 to 2015, global internet diffusion grew sevenfold from 6.5% to 46%. For every internet user in developed world, there are 2 in the developing world. Of 940 million people living in the least developed countries, only 80 million use internet, corresponding to 9.5% penetration rate. Mobile broadband is the most dynamic market segment. Globally, mobile broadband penetration reaches 47% in 2015, a value that increases 12 times since 2007. Fixed broadband uptake is growing at a slower pace with 7% and will increase over the past 3 years and reaching 11% penetration by the end 2015. There are around 90 million PC internet users with 40 million heavy users and 86 million active mobile internet users with 22 million heavy users on 3G. The market analysis indicate that Indian 3G penetration is 10 years behind that of the mobile voice adoption rate. India witnessed a subtle shift towards a socially inclusive policy agenda in the year 2007. The issue of combating social exclusion and establishing an inclusive society now forms a bedrock of academic and political discourse in many countries. One of the most intriguing aspects of recent social policy formation in India has been the convergence of information society and inclusive society discourse into ongoing popular and political debate over potential of ICTs to either exacerbate or alleviate social exclusion. Engagement with technology is therefore less concerned with issues of access and ownership, but more about how people develop relationships with technology and how they are capable of making use of social resources which make access usable. In the end, I would like to conclude with some recommendations. Number 1, it is important to design appropriate strategy and programs to lower the cost and access barriers to ICT for customers, especially for poor, disabled, deprived women, senior citizen. It is also an imperative to create a conducive regulatory environment for partnership between public and private bodies that could allow an active and voluntary infrastructure sharing and release sufficient spectrum at an affordable cost. Number 2, lack of native contents in vernacular language continue to be a major barrier in effective use of internet. Developing a keypad that include vernacular language and simple iconic and symbolic interface in order to experience ease of use of the technology will be instrumental for accepting ICT. Creation of local content that could be promoted through local institutions such as schools, local self-government and community organizations. The cost effectiveness and potential of local contents must be weighed against the advantage of pre-existing global information system. Number 3, in order to minimize the gap in literacy and to improve the standard of livelihood, the challenge is to promoting and implementing multiple literacy modules including technical literacy, digital literacy, skill promotion through community organization in villages and the development of a learning material for multiple literacy program. Number 4, the access points of social services in each district, block, panchayats, for instance, community information centers, rural libraries, public health center have to be made functional and strengthened. Number 5, ICT projects must build on the assessment of local needs as locally defined by local people. As we can see, women wants information about childcare, health, child rearing, education and reproductive control. Men are interested in information on crops, prices and economic life. Number 6. It is important to design intervention to address the underlying gender disparities that influence the access to ICTs and to improve education and employment. Skill development has to be equally supplemented by personality development, life skills, leadership skills, etc. in the scope of their education. It is also important to assess if the skills imparted have to lead good jobs, decent salaries, which would contribute to holistic empowerment of citizens. Information technologies should be introduced when they constitute the most effective available way of meeting basic human needs and fulfilling fundamental human rights. ICTs can have an optimistic role in development, but ICTs are neither a panacea or necessarily the first line of attack to combat poverty, misery and injustice. The utility of ICT must always be judged against the role it can play in meeting core human needs. That's all for today. In the next module, I will discuss about the role of mobile phone in the instrument of convergence, existing policy measures and technological interventions to universalize telecom services in India and to increase penetration of mobile phone in rural areas in India. Thank you.